Thank you everyone for joining. We'll give 1 more minute for everyone else to join as well.
We're just going to give it another couple of minutes before we start off. GD, I think we are ready to start up the meeting.
Okay, good. Welcome everyone. We are really excited to talk to all of you today. So Jan, if you could jump to maybe the next slide. Yes. So as most of you probably already know, we launched LogPoint 7 in January. And this release gave all of our users free access to use LogPoint SOAR. And hopefully after today, you will feel even more capable to start using this new tool. But on to the agenda for today. First of all, we want to kind of set the scene and talk about some of the common challenges in cybersecurity. And then we'll talk a little bit about what is SOAR at LogPoint. And then we will go through a ransomware attack without and with SOAR. And then we will show you guys how to build a playbook from scratch. And then we will talk a little bit about how you can become even better at using LogPoint SOAR with some different training sessions and different webinars. And we will, of course, also talk a little bit about where you can join other LogPoint users in our wonderful community and have some time for some questions. Just before we skip to the next slide, I just want to make sure that you all know that we are, of course, recording this session and it will be available on our website after this session. But before I hand over the mic to my wonderful colleagues, I just want to introduce the two guys I have with me today. First of all, my name is Gitte. I'm a product marketing manager here at LogPoint. And with me today, I have, first of all, Jan, who is Director of Customer Success Engineering. He leads our customer success engineering team here at LogPoint in Copenhagen. And he is really focused on bringing the most value of our solution to our partners and customers. Jan, he has been in the security industry for more than 20 plus years and has held various senior leadership positions and technical positions. Both as CISO for Vestas, Danske Bank, and been a cybersecurity country lead at Accenture. So thank you for joining us today as well, Jan. And next to him, we have Doron. Doron comes out of Tel Aviv. He is leading our global services team in Israel. He focuses on the global delivery of LogPoint SOAR and our XDR capabilities. Deron, of course, is the founder of SecBI, which was acquired by LogPoint in 2021, where he served as the VP of Business Development. And prior to that, he has held operational and PL responsibilities for RSA's EMEA professional security services practices. So he also comes with more than 20 years of experience in IT security and telecommunications. So we have some really experienced, good guys joining me. So thankfully for both you and me, it's not me who's going to be demoing and talking about all the technical stuff. I have these two guys with me to do that. So without further ado, I will hand over the mic to you, Jan.
Thank you very much, Gitte. Thank you for the introduction. And also welcome to all of you. Really excited to be here and share with you LogPoint 7 and also some of the things that we have baked into the product. But one of the first things I'd like to talk about is some of the common challenges we see in cybersecurity. One of the things that, or many of the things that hits me at least, is all these abbreviations, all these technologies. You hear things like UEBA, you hear XDR, EDR, SIEM, SOAR. It's one big crock pot of stuff where it's a little bit difficult to navigate of, if I have SIEM+SOAR, do I need XDR? If I have XDR, do I need SIEM+SOAR? Do I need machine learning? The very short answer is yes. You kind of need all of it because there are different concepts, there are different capabilities addressing different needs. But if you really want to cook it down and simmer on it, what it really means is the end result. We want to lower the mean time to detect and respond. And the way that we've done so in LogPoint is what we're going to be talking about quite a lot here today, the SIEM+SOAR constellation, which again, it is not a solution that excludes XDR, NDR, EDR, but it is a ecosystem that adds to it. So you will still need all the other concepts, features, capabilities to have a rich cybersecurity posture. So when we're talking about lowering mean time to detect, some of the items that typically takes a lot of time in terms of responding and detecting is all the information that you get. You have an overload of events, you're triggering those events. You need to start investigating, is it a false positive? Is it, what's the risk of it? Is it high risk, low risk? And all that before you can do your triage, basically fixing what is bleeding the most. It is really time consuming. And what we also see in the industry is there's a shortage of staff. There has been a very high demand for cybersecurity professionals. You're probably aware it is difficult to find new colleagues, do new hirings. That really also puts a strain on the existing resources to do all that triage and investigations. Another type of item that is time consuming is the processes. When things are moving fast and you're in a critical situation and you need to solve something fast, processes might be skipped. There might be items where you have to move a bit faster, or simply because you forget. It happens. When things are moving fast and you're doing your triaging, you're doing your stop the bleeding, you're fixing the problem and you're going at it at a very fast pace. So things might get missed in that process when you're doing that. And then coming back to some of the things that I discussed earlier is there are simply many point solutions. You have a lot of different technologies from firewalls, EDRs, antivirus on endpoints. You have server protection services, your IDS. It's simply, you have so many things out there. Where do you start looking? Where do you go and find the information that you need to do your first response and your investigation? Coming back to the way that we've tried to solve this, or at least alleviate some of that pain, is introducing SOAR to our current SIEM product. Using all the items that you already know from LogPoint, we're now also adding that information that is available in LogPoint to provide SOAR capabilities, basically that you can automate quite a lot of the items that you would typically manually do. Now, we are going to go a little bit deeper into that, so I'm not going to explain it here. We are going to get to that part. How does that actually look like? What does it feel like? So the whole touch and feel on that. If we're looking at in terms of how we've done the SOAR in LogPoint, again, coming back to what I was mentioning before of all the components, the alerting structure, the incident structure. Many of you are already LogPoint customers. I know there are a few of you that may not be LogPoint customers, so I'll try to explain a little bit. We have notifications in LogPoint that triggers a case inside of LogPoint. That case is then transferred into the SOAR component, and then from that SOAR component, it triggers the playbooks. So, and again, we will show you later here in the presentation how that actually looks like and the look and feel of that. Coming back to the challenges that I mentioned. So the way that we are addressing those items, when, for example, look at the overload of events and alerts, we have items or we have use cases inside SOAR. So what that basically means is that there is a problem statement, and I'm going to go and also talk about what is a use case, but just here on the helicopter view, there is an issue with there's simply too many alerts that's happening. We can, from that, trigger a use case that starts doing a false positive check as an example. And again, we will come into an example of how that looks like. The whole staff and knowledge shortage, we have playbooks. Basically, this is pre-programmed, so to speak, actions that happens that can be called. So in a use case, you can have multiple playbooks that addresses a given situation. And again, the demonstration will showcase how that actually works and how it looks like. The long and complex manual processes, as I mentioned before, when things are going fast and you're addressing and you're triaging, there are certain checklists that might not get read completely because things needs to move fast. But imagine this, if these are already pre-programmed in a playbook and triggered through a playbook, then all those actions that's actually happening will still happen when that playbook triggers. So it's not a manual process where you need to go in and check for a given file, do a hash check on it, for example, or do a search query that tests out how many other users has actually touched this malware or this file that is shown as high risk. So these are just sample examples of what could be playbooks in a given use case. The too many points of solutions, we need that orchestration. Well, SIEM, it is the area where you receive all the information from your components, from your endpoint servers, etc., where you can do that one pane of investigation. And last but not least, it's the automation. But actually, you can already guess that through all the items that I've talked about so far, with the playbooks, the use cases, and the central orchestration where you have all your information, you can thereby trigger your automation and do things through trigger points rather than a manual startup of a given process to start your investigation and start your response to a given threat that you've seen. So how does it actually look like if we walk through an incident process? So let me try to put things in perspective a little bit. Imagine this, that there is an alert that triggers. When that alert triggers, let's say it's a phishing trigger or an indicator of compromise, when that happens, typically you would need to wait for somebody to see that alert. A person that grabs that case, puts it in the incident system, and then starts working on it. That's typically 2 to 3 hours before that even starts, before somebody figures it out, sees an alert, puts it in the ticketing system, and then starts the triaging. You will then need to do the manual investigation. So how do you triage? You need to prioritize. So what is it that hurts the most and get that fixed? So you do your manual investigation. How serious is this? How big a risk is this? How many other indicators of compromises are there in the system? And so forth and so forth. You go further out, you look for more sources. You get threat intel from the outside. Those are typically hashes, or if there are any types of patterns or attacks that's seen out there externally, you start triggering your resources out there and do your correlation and then build up your context. and then you start another or pass the ticket, so to speak, to the next in line. So that would be your normal process. And give or take this, before you even start fixing the problem, probably 5 to 6 hours are already gone. That would be a natural, and that's even a very fast response. So if we're looking at it from a SOAR perspective, imagine that the same trigger happens. There's a phishing notification that goes in, and this triggers a playbook, and this actually happens immediately. That playbook then goes in and looks at all the resources that you're given to it. Of course, you need those integrations and APIs to the calls, but if it's there, it will automatically go out and do that validation, context building for you, and through that, build out an automatic response. Again, something that Doron will showcase a bit more so you can see how it really works, what it feels like, and what does it look like in a log point context. So what we really want to really emphasize here today is we understand the pain in that working process of actually addressing. And as I mentioned before, it's really lowering the mean time to detect and mean time to respond. That is really the key essence for any security product. And we are doing that by addressing those stages in handling of an incident, from detection all the way to the response. And as you've seen before, we've built it through a almost one-to-one that your alert and notification. So we really want to do the help find the false positives, do the context buildup, and also automate the items. You can really see here that we are trying to reduce the amount of alerts that you receive that are valid. We want to increase the accuracy because we've already done the context building for you. And since we can automate some of these tasks, it should alleviate some of the work, the manual work that is on the team. And that should give more time to do actual investigations on real alerts. This, in essence, will reduce the time to respond. And basically, end of day, we should be looking at providing an overall better security posture. So how do we actually enable SOAR? If you have Logpoint 7, it is part of the product. It's a very simple 3-step. You go into your system settings, and then basically you check mark the enable SOAR in Logpoint, save, and there you go. You're actually up and running with SOAR, and you can start using those playbooks that's already part of the system. I did talk about use cases in the beginning. So if we're looking into the use cases and how that looks like, these are the typical demands that we've seen with some of our customers that we've worked with of issues. Let's call them issues. Use cases are typically there to solve a problem. And these are the common problem statements that we see amongst our customers. And hopefully you can also nod and see for yourself that these are very common items that you typically would ask for. Phishing mitigation, I mean, who doesn't know about that? Ransomware mitigation, you hear about it in the news all the time. Compromised credential mitigation, this is the typical way in for any given attack, is that you compromise the credentials and you do your lateral movement. So again, these are common attack vectors to which we have built the playbooks to address from the beginning. And from here, I think it is much more valuable that I pass it on to Doron and can actually give you a look and feel of what does this look like in real life in Logpoint. So Doron, if you'll take it away.
Thank you, Jan. Please stop sharing so I can share mine. So thank you, Jan. This is basically where you've stopped, so I'll take it from here. Next part is talking a bit about playbook. So if use case is the problem statement or something that you would like to solve, a playbook is basically how do you solve it. The processes that sometimes you do manually, sometimes you have an actual workflow, and the playbook would actually take that workflow and build it into the system, and then you can even automate it. So a playbook is comprised of a series of actions. Every action can be either an interaction with an analyst, or it can be an interaction as an orchestration with one of the existing security controls that you have in-house or in the cloud that you subscribed to, as well as a playbook would then be triggered by some by a certain condition And in our case, because it's a SIEM+SOAR solution, that condition would actually be an alert that is triggered within the SIEM that automatically calls or generates a trigger that then calls a playbook as part of our SOAR solution. So this is an example of playbook. This is actually an example of playbook that would be part of your infrastructure. Within your infrastructure, you may have one, two, several, for example, threat intelligence sources. And here within one single playbook that is called check IP reputation, you can basically trigger and get information from all of the different threat intelligence sources that you are subscribed to in one single single playbook, as opposed to something that is a bit more complex, such as a phishing, that will utilize some of the generic playbooks that you have in place, as well as bringing your own business know-how and your own existing SOC procedures into a single playbook that you can then again automate. So we wanted to take you kind of through the life of an analyst before and after they've implemented Logpoint SOAR on top of the Logpoint SIEM that you already have. And I assume that most of you already have our Logpoint SIEM deployed. And as such, let's take one of the, or actually it's two of the most common use cases that we hear of. Most customers are interested to automate to look into the first two use cases, which are phishing and ransomware. And in this case, we are talking about phishing and ransomware, as phishing is still used as the most popular delivery vehicle or mechanism for ransomware within organizations. So let's assume that we are looking at a single phishing email that was sent from an unknown source, basically, to our marketing department. Many of the organizations obviously already have some kind of email security, but they don't always pick up on these advanced phishing attacks. Some of them do, and then they are remediated or deleted and purged automatically. But those that don't actually get to the mailboxes of our employees, and they are waiting to be opened. As such, we are still keeping all of these logs, obviously, in our SIEMs, hoping that in real time we'll be able to correlate between these emails that are received, some of which might be indeed phishing, with some malware attachments, such as in this case with a malicious attachment. And then if we correlate that in real time with our threat intelligence source, hopefully this will be picked up. And this is the case that we are looking at right now. So indeed, we've received this email. We're all familiar with this screen. Was a correlation between the email, or actually the attachment SHA that was compared with our threat intelligence, and therefore we've created this single incident. This incident was then picked up by an analyst. Now, we all know how analysts are. We are busy, extremely busy. And therefore, we are handling a couple of other incidents before we've actually noticed that this was triggered within our SIEM. There are always different priorities in our security operations center. And assuming that it's only 15 minutes, and I know that this is really optimistic because sometimes we also have, go for lunch or to the bathroom, God forbid, we're even allowed to do that. But after 15 minutes, we did pick up on this specific incident. And we started asking ourselves many different questions. Who's the sender? Do we know him? What do we know about this domain? Who are the recipients? Have they ever received an email from this specific user? Is this a normal time to receive these kind of emails? So on and so forth. We're then taking the IP, we're taking the URL, we're obviously taking the file itself, sending the file or submitting it onto VirusTotal in this case, just to find out that indeed this is a malicious attachment to this email. And therefore, we need to start with some additional investigation and response eventually. So we want, first of all, to ask IT department to clean up all the malicious emails from our mail server. This takes time. I know IT are always ready, but still it takes some time. Let's say we're T+90 from when that initial alert was triggered, and I know that this is very optimistic. About 3 hours later, we've continued with our investigation, and we found, or we now want to also delete all of these attachments from endpoints. If, God forbid, these attachments actually got to any of those endpoints, this process takes some time as well. Let's say only 30 minutes. But as we continue with our investigation, we will find out that maybe one of these machines was actually compromised. So someone from marketing received that email, opened it, attachment was downloaded, was detonated, and then we actually need to start an isolation from the network of a larger scale. Because during this period of time, propagation had already started to other endpoints, and we now need to also block the whole network segment, in this case, probably marketing. And marketing are extremely important to the organizations. They are the ones that set up this webinar, so we couldn't have done it without them. And not only that, we now have 50 endpoints that we need to redeploy, and this will take us a lot of time in the organization. So, assuming that only 24 hours would suffice to close on this specific attack, not to mention the fact that then it will take us several hours just to explain to our management and to the CEO why are we at this point of time. As opposed to this 24 hours, let's look at what would happen if we were to do that using our SOAR system. So I'll stop sharing here and I'll share my browser. Okay, so we all remember this this screen. We started there as well, and we can see that on my demo system, we had an incident at 15:22. So that was 8 minutes ago, and every 10 minutes, by the way, I have a new one. That's why we have here several of these. So again, it took me maybe the same 15 minutes to notice it, but in reality, something is already happening behind the scenes. What is happening? There's a playbook, obviously, for this specific investigation. And not only that there is a playbook, we even have a trigger. So it triggered automatically, the playbook started running, but this specific playbook, I've also added one single point to stop and wait for an analyst for review. Why? Because this is how I decided to implement. You can automate the full process, or you can have an interaction with the analyst. So you can see here on my monitoring page that we have one single playbook called incident response procedure that is waiting for input after finishing 39% of the procedure. So let's look, and we'll look at what it had actually done so far. But it basically asks me, EDR search and destroy has found one endpoint that have executed the malicious file. Would you like to isolate that endpoint? And I will say yes, so it will actually continue with the process. And if we now go and look at the cases, so we've seen before the incidents coming from the SIEM, and now let's look at cases created. We will see that an incident that was created 9 minutes ago, as we've seen, was just created. So you can see here what was the trigger that had triggered my playbook. And you can see, well, it's 16:22 because I'm in Israel, so we're 1 hour ahead. But this is actually 15:22, same as it was on the SIEM. And we can see all the relevant information of this specific alert. So what is the name? Malware detected in email. This alert triggers when possible malicious attachment is present in email. All of this information came to us via the incident from the SIEM, so with direct kind of integration. We have all the relevant information here to initiate our investigation process, including the query to bring additional information from the SIEM, start time, end time, and so on. So we can actually start the process of investigation. And this is the process where I, as an analyst, looking to understand what had actually happened. So how many users within my marketing department, for example, have received this email? What was received, and so on. This initial investigation process actually gave us this following information. Mamkas has found a total of 6 emails with suspicious attachment. This is the email sender, hr@techpoint.com. Note the 0 and there is no .com email. So if this organization is actually called techpoint.com, then this indeed looks like a suspicious email. But with the subject, time for TechPoint's yearly bonus. Who wouldn't want to open such an email? Definitely in the marketing department, they want to open such emails. This is the attachment, this is its SHA. And not only that, VirusTotal came back with 38 engines that had detected it as malicious. So as an analyst, I want to understand who are all of these 6 recipients. I can start querying different systems and so on, or I can do it automatically via my playbook and find that Sarah, Daniel, Peter, Chris, Thomas, and Michael are all part of my marketing department that have received this email. This is one of my sub playbooks, by the way, that is part of this incident investigation, and therefore I'm raising automatically my severity to 70. Again, these are the decisions that an organization can decide according to different parameters. You can also decide that if VirusTotal or any other of your threat intelligence sources brings an answer of 10 to 50 engines, the severity is only 60. And if it's 50 to 80, then the severity goes up to 90. And then you want to have a different type of automation. Maybe above 70, it's an automated response, while below 70, you actually want an analyst to look at it, and so on. We're also changing the status of the case itself to in progress. You can note here that now it's already closed, but it was in progress just a few minutes ago, and you'll see when it's changed to closed as well. And we're continuing with our automated investigation. So 6 emails were successfully deleted from the mailboxes. So we actually did that process that we've asked the IT to do before. We've done it automatically via an API, or in this case, it's via our Graph API with Office 365. After that, we've also deleted the files from the endpoint. In this case, this is CrowdStrike. So we have an API with CrowdStrike. This is the file name, and it went through the whole organization, obviously. Then I also want to add these IOCs again to my mail gateway, to my EDR, and so on. Why? So that if I will keep on receiving additional similar emails, maybe from the same sender, maybe not from the same sender, but with the same subject or with the same email attachment, they will all be flagged now automatically and blocked automatically and sent to quarantine. In this case, I decided also to change the status to malicious. So it was new at the beginning. Now it already changes to malicious. This is where I'm asking the analyst. So I found that this endpoint of Daniel Johnson had actually downloaded this file to the machine and executed it. And therefore, and again, this is all through my orchestration with CrowdStrike. And therefore, I've asked the analyst here, do you want to isolate this machine? And this is that yes that we've done before. Yes, we want this endpoint to be isolated from the machine, and therefore Daniel Johnson's machine is now isolated, and a report is then sent automatically to the SOC manager, CISO, IT manager, all depending on your internal processes, and then finally changing the status to closed. And this is status closed as it was in progress before. So in this case, it took us, I don't know, I guess 9 minutes, including the time that I was going through the previous case with you. So 9 minutes instead of 3.5 hours until we got to respond to this Daniel's downloading the file. And this is the difference between no propagation of the attack versus 50 machines that I now need to also clean. So it's not just a matter of doing things faster, simpler, and in a more reliable way. It's also making sure that we do not necessarily need to activate different teams to do work that we can save in advance rather than after the fact. From this, the idea of the case itself is to provide the analyst the context of what it is that he's investigating and how. But to get here, you basically need to build the playbook itself. Building a playbook might sound to you quite complicated, but in reality, it's actually quite simple. So let me show you a couple of things, and I'll even show you how to build a simple playbook so that you can, after this session, do that yourself. So before I do that, let me go through a very short explanation. So we've seen here that you have the incidents coming from the SIEM itself. Based on these incidents, you can basically find what is the query or what is the rule that had triggered these specific incidents. Not sure why it's not showing, but it will show in a second. And therefore, based on that, you can then build your own triggers in the system. So when you go to playbooks, you have basically a couple of things. You have a list of all of the predefined, pre-existing playbooks in the system, some of which come with the system out of the box, some of which you might have defined according to your internal processes. So we have some playbooks for alert enrichment, alert prioritization, automation investigation, and so on. Other than that, you have monitoring of playbooks. These are the playbooks that have started running or that you ran yourself manually. And you have the manage playbook triggers, which is where we manage the triggers from an incident in the SIEM to an actual playbook. So you can see here, for example, this is my Mimecast threat intelligence according to the trigger of the incident that you've seen before. You can see that it is enabled, and in the automation, this is the playbook out of the list of all the playbooks that I have here that will be executed when this will actually be triggered. So let's create now a simple playbook together. I see that my connectivity is a bit slow. I will take off my video with your permission. Cool. So I'm planning to show you something that you're probably doing each and every day of your lives as a security analyst or as someone that is looking at what security analysts are doing, which is enrichment from threat intelligence. In this specific case, I'm going to use VirusTotal. Why? Because I like them. Add new playbook. It's this simple. As I told you before, we can have several types of triggers for a playbook. You can schedule it according to a certain time. I want my playbook to run every night at 12. I want my playbook to run every morning to generate a report and so on. Or based on the log point SIEM incident, this is what we've seen a second ago, or another playbook. So this is a nested playbook. One playbook calls another. And the reason that I'm doing it this way is because now it's simple for me to just give it a couple of parameters, and then I will run it manually myself. So let's say that in this case, I want to get an input of IP. I can give it a default. Let's say 1111, or I can leave it, and then the other playbook will have to send some kind of parameter to this sub playbook. And let's call it action trigger, test on VT, save data. So we're now saving our playbook. So this is webinar VT playbook. We have several categories. You can build a playbook for detection, for investigation, for response, for hunting, etc. This is just informative so that you will be able to use this playbook afterwards. The content of the playbook doesn't really change from this, but in this case, we are doing an investigation, and therefore I chose investigation, and we are going to save it on our demo. Select, save. Saving playbook. Okay, I hope it is saved. I will continue either way. It's as simple as now choosing one of the actions that I already have. I can run another playbook because every playbook can run other playbooks. I can run a script via Python, for example. I can change or manage the status of this whole case. I can write a case item, and we will in a second. But what I really want to do is use my API to call virus total in this case. So we have a list of product types, and I'm looking for my threat intelligence product specifically for virus total. I have two, virus total version 2 and version 3. Product instance, every product that you have, you can actually have several of those instances. In this case, I only have one. And what I want to do is check IP, which IP, and this is the input that I'm providing it. From the trigger, I got my input IP, if you remember. Save and save data. From here, I now want to create a message. So action block format, let's format a nice message. Input IP is $brackets variable 1 brackets, and VT result is $brackets variable 2 brackets, and variable 1 will be the IP that I got from my trigger. And variable 2 will be the result from virus total. So this result is basically how many engines found it to be malicious. Let's not forget that we also wanted to create a case. So case item type, we want a label. Which label? The one I've just created. Pick format this message. Save, and we can close it. Save data, save playbook, close. Excellent. We can test the playbook here, which basically just makes sure that all the connections are correct, that all the input parameters that I'm supposed to send are here. And playbook successfully submitted, and you can see, refresh, that everything is green, so it all passed successfully. If I now want to really run it and see the results as part of my cases created, then webinar VT playbook, I can run it. I can run it with this input, run playbook. And let's run it again with, I'll take from maximize the suspicious IP. And let's run it again, webinar VT playbook. Playbook. Okay, and now let's look at cases created. And these are the last two. This one should be with 111. Input IP is 111, VT result is 0. And if I go back, input parameter is this one, VT result are 12 malicious, 12 engines found this IP to be malicious. This is the IP that I took from Maxmine. Thank you, Maxmine. So this is a bit about how to simply create a playbook. Obviously, there are many other options. We're not here going to cover all of these, but I did think, or we thought that if we actually create some open hours for you, then anyone that is planning over the weekend or at the beginning of next week to actually start working with your SOAR system, you will probably have additional questions, some of which you already have now, and we are going to answer during today's Q&A. But if you have additional questions, you can actually join one of our open hour sessions that we're going to have next week and the following week, and then live we can look at your environment. We can help you with any open questions and help you go through this whole process. Generally speaking, there are several ways to create these playbooks. Most organizations are doing that themselves, but some would actually utilize their partners or their MSSPs or MDRs to kind of build and manage their playbooks and their processes within their security operations centers. Some might actually utilize our global services service that is called a playbook design service, where we actually help organizations build their playbooks from scratch and bringing them up to production in a speedy kind of process. Thank you for this slide. So these are the open hours that we're planning to have over the next couple of weeks. We will add a few more. So if you have questions, just feel free to contact us directly, and we can help you with that. I saw that someone asked where is the URL, so all of that is on our website.
Thank you, Doron.
Thank you,
so we just have a couple of extra things before we jump into the questions. I see that Jan has been keeping up while Doron has been speaking to answering a lot of your questions as we go along. But as Doron mentioned, so we have a couple of different things. We have, of course, the Q&A open hour sessions. But if you want to really dig into SOAR and become as good at handling it as Doron is, we have a session on March 22nd, where we simply do a really deep dive into the SOAR, LogPoint SOAR tool. So that is also an option where you can, and it's a maximum of 15 participants per session. If we get overwhelmed by how many sign up, we will of course add more sessions, but yeah, jump in as quick as you can, because he won't take more than 15. And if you need any guides or manuals in order to work with LogPoint SOAR or LogPoint in general, you can always go to our doc portal, docs.logpoint.com. Here you can find all the different getting started manuals that you need, especially the one that's called Getting Started with SOAR. It's a really good manual to get started. Also, just some of you already know, some of you are already a part of the community, but we just wanted to make sure that you guys know about this as well. Go to our community site. There is all the latest and greatest product news. You can share your best tips and tricks, or be inspired by other people who share their tips and tricks. There you can also learn a lot more about the different events and courses and trainings that we do. And they also have some fun competitions in there. So please feel free to join us there. And then as time is almost running out, I'm just gonna quickly run into the Q&A. So Jan, I know that there was a couple of questions that we needed to answer.
There is. The first is the licensing scheme. So there is one seat free in LogPoint 7. If you need additional seats to that, there is a licensing scheme on that. Arendorn, if you have more specifics into what that one seat means and concurrent seats.
So it's one concurrent seat, so you can work basically in shifts, and as long as it's a SOC of just 1 or 2 personnel, this should be enough. Obviously, for larger security operations center, they will want to purchase additional seats once they see that this actually provides them value. So the idea of this one initial seat is to make sure that you see value from adding SOAR to your existing processes, and then you can purchase additional seats if you need.
Yeah, and then there is one of how many out-of-the-box playbooks do we have in SOAR currently? Because I know we are adding as we go.
So we currently have 85 or so out-of-the-box playbooks, and it's a couple of dozen basically use cases. So know that every use case can have several such playbooks. We're adding them all the time as we see fit. But we need to remember that most organizations during the first year, they're going to deploy only between 6 and 12 kind of playbooks. It's not about having as many playbooks as you can, but rather having the right processes automated within your security operations center so that you can free your analysts' time to do what's really important in the security operations center.
All right, there's also one in regards to, can you add custom APIs, or do you have to use the LP or have LogPoint do the development of additional APIs?
So I think that I answered Simon that, but in theory, we are supporting any existing public REST API security control that is out there. And if we have not done something, then we'll add it as soon as the customer needs. That said, yes, you can add your own actions. During the session on Tuesday, I'm actually happy to show you how to do that yourself, Simon, or anyone else. So if you have custom built solution in-house, you can actually add those actions to our LogPoint SIEM+SOAR solution for orchestration and response.
All right. I think there is a couple of more that I might have missed. I think one is access to our demo system. This is a LogPoint demo system, so we don't usually, or we don't use it for customers or partners, as this is our sandbox and we configure it as we need it and as we use it. And I think there was also a question in regards to LogPoint 7, if it integrates with other UEBA providers. This is really about our SOAR platform and presenting our SOAR, but a short answer to that is if your third-party UEBA provider can accept information of how we export it from LogPoint, then that will be your answer. We don't per se build an API inside of LogPoint to an external third-party UEBA.
I will add to that, Jan, that if that UEBA system has a REST API.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I meant. So if we don't have a specific, what would you call it? When it's proprietary, we don't do proprietary. So if you have REST API, that's what I meant. You can export the data from LogPoint using that means.
Can we trial a license download? So if you have a LogPoint SIEM deployed, you just need to upgrade it to 7.0 and you will have one license to use on your SOAR.
So built in the product. So get up to LogPoint 7 and it's there.
we made sure to make it as simple as possible for our customers to start utilizing SOAR. SOAR has to be part of SIEM. It's the next step of evolution for every SIEM. We're just ahead of the game.
Okay. Were there any more questions, or I see maybe one more. How does the SOAR component, is that in the Q&A? Or maybe was that one of the...
Yeah, so how does the SOAR component impact performance?
So it doesn't impact significantly. So the expectation from a hardware or from resources perspective is about 10% more than what you have today for your SIEM. All of that is documented on our website in the release notes. And the main reason for that is that we are an orchestration platform. So we call other APIs and other systems out there. And the only thing that we're doing is just orchestrate, bring from here, bring from there, and put it out as a case. There are no additional heavy lifting to be done on the existing server.
And we just got a question. I'm not sure I understand the question. Integration, SAP plugin, okay. So if I were to understand it correctly, we do have a SAP integration. And you can use, if that outputs, we can build alerts on top of that, and those alerts can trigger a playbook. So through that, you can do your playbooks, so to speak. So I think I would say yes, but again, I'm not sure in the context of the question.
The answer is yes, and we can go into details together on.
There is an open session here. We have 4 sessions coming along. Join those, and we'll definitely go deeper into some of these questions if you have further questions. But I think we are about to reach the end. So Gita, if you'll wrap it up for us.
Yes. So thank you guys all for joining. I think we just finished up right on time. So that's always a joy. I hope you all enjoyed and the presentations from my 2 colleagues. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us either on the open hour sessions or directly via the community or our website. So I wish you all a great day or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. And we hope to see you in some of our next webinars coming along.
And thank you, Gita, for managing us on time.
Thank everyone for joining. We appreciate it.
Bye.